Although the influence of the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith in shaping such scandalous and divisive activities as the behavior of the FBI and the Justice Department in the infamous sedition case, and in slanting media coverage of American dissidents who opposed the Zionist agenda before and during World War II, through the use of such willing ADL-connected troublemakers as columnist Walter Winchell. The fact is that the ADL's activities continued to expand in the years following the war, but in those days there were still some highly placed, genuine patriots, even in Congress, who were prepared to take on the ADL. In 1947, a congressional committee investigated one segment of the National Spy Network of the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith. In this particular instance, congressional investigators were inquiring into the way in which the ADL and one of its front groups, the so-called Friends of Democracy, had managed to penetrate a federal agency and place false, malicious, and defamatory information about ADL targets in the agency's files. On October 3rd, 6th, 7th, 1947, then Representative Claire E. Hoffman of Michigan, chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Expenditures in the Executive Departments, convened a subcommittee to investigate the U.S. Civil Service Commission, the agency which oversees federal personnel. Joining Hoffman as a member of this subcommittee was Representative Porter Hardy, Jr. from Virginia. Hoffman and others had learned that there were CSC files containing statements bearing upon the views, opinions, and activities of certain members of Congress and their wives, as well as a number of other prominent Americans, most of whom had never actually sought a position through the CSC. According to Hoffman, much of the information, some of it derogatory, appeared to be largely rumor, hearsay, that had been entered into file cards kept in the CSC's offices. Hoffman revealed during the hearing that investigators had determined that there was a notation on many of these cards that read as follows: "The above was copied from the subversive file in the possession of attorneys Mintzer and Levy, 39 Broadway, New York City, room 3305. These files were made up in cooperation with the American Jewish Committee and the Anti-Defamation League. The sources of this information must not be disclosed under any circumstances nor be quoted. However, further information concerning above may be secured by contacting offices of Mintzer and Levy." According to Hoffman, that notation is on the bottom of cards which carry information to the effect that the individuals named, senators and congressmen, were disloyal, belonged to subversive groups, engaged in perhaps traitorous activities. What was especially shocking, of course, is that the federal agency was obviously saying in its private notation was that although the agency was including the ADL's defamations among its own files, the individuals targeted by the ADL did not have the right to know the source of the libelous accusations, a flagrant violation of the traditional right of every person to be able to face his accuser. Interestingly, several CSC commissioners who were called to testify, including James E. Hatcher, chief of the Central Office, Investigations Division of the CSC, acknowledged that they had no knowledge of how the ADL's propaganda had been inserted into the Commission's files. What's more, according to Hatcher, "I not only think, I am sure, I am positive, that they did it without authority from the Commission." Hatcher added, "I think that as an American I feel that it is highly improper, and definitely I feel things should not be in the files." This statement, of course, was from an officer responsible for seeking the facts, not malicious lies, about prospective public servants. All of this suggests that it was an ADL plant in the offices of the CSC, who had inserted the derogatory information into the files. The ADL, of course, is known to have penetrated more than one government agency over the years, not to mention perhaps hundreds of private associations, publishing enterprises, and other entities. In resolving the matter, committee member Representative Fred Bushy, Illinois, asked another witness, Harry Mitchell, president of the CSC, what is going to be the attitude of the Civil Service Commission in the future regarding names being put in its files by the Anti-Defamation League, or Friends of Democracy, out of the files of these organizations? Mitchell responded, "They will not go in the files." When asked by Busby whether he considered the information to be unquestionably reliable, Mitchell answered, "I would not think so. I presume they are communist organizations. I do not really know." Although Busby commented that to his knowledge the ADL and its front group were not communist organizations, the congressman was commenting without the knowledge that history has bequeathed us. In fact, the ADL was one of the primary controllers, along with the Soviet Kremlin, of the Communist Party USA. Even at the same time, the Communist Party was controlled at the top by an asset of ADL-allied FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. However, the ADL's particular influence over the Communist Party USA has largely been ignored or forgotten. The ADL's special influence was reported by the late Dr. Bella Dodd, a former CPUSA leader, who told intimates, after leaving the Red Orbit, that whenever the American communists needed financing or strategic advice, they had instructions to visit ADL bigwigs in Manhattan. Certain conservatives who are under the discipline of the ADL, or who have otherwise been afraid to mention anything that might be perceived as harmful to the ADL, have frequently quoted Dr. Dodd's intriguing revelation, but I've always been careful to delete her reference to the ADL, reporting only that the ADL operatives were extremely wealthy American capitalists. Very clearly, then, the ADL was, as the CSC commissioner presumed, a communist organization. In any case, Committee Chairman Hoffman stated flatly and correctly about the ADL and the Friends of Democracy. I will tell you that they are mere smear artists. In a historical footnote, in the 1992 U.S. Senate campaign in Pennsylvania, the ADL got its revenge against the deceased Representative Porter Hardy, who had boldly joined Representative Hoffman in investigating the ADL's spy activities. When Hardy's daughter, Lynn Hardy Yeakel, a successful businesswoman, challenged the incumbent Senator Arlen Specter for re-election, one of the ADL's leading advocates in Congress, a whispering campaign was unleashed accusing Mrs. Yeakel of being anti-Semitic. Specter won re-election. This is just one example of how the ADL, representing the enemy within, has played a pivotal behind-the-scenes role in impacting upon American public policy. Literally positioned to determine who could get employment in the American government. If anyone truly believes that the ADL does not yet still play a similar role, particularly in this day of computerization and high-tech spying, that person is truly naive. All of this is just the tip of the iceberg regarding the activities of the ADL.